Come to day 27 of our journey through the Bible, and we come to Moses. You probably know something of his story about how he was amazingly preserved by God as a little child and ended up living and growing up in the house of Pharaoh, part of royalty, growing up undoubtedly thinking that he was a very, very important person. But then one day he did something stupid. He looked around and he thought no one was looking, and so he ended up murdering an Egyptian. Then he covered his body up in the sand, thinking no one had seen it. Unfortunately for Moses, or maybe fortunately, he forgot to look up. He did not escape God's attention. But God's purpose was not for Moses to spend the rest of his life in prison or to be put to death, but instead to send him out into a wilderness. And there he'd learn to be a nobody. He'd tend a bunch of stinking animals, he'd marry a Midianite woman, and I think he kind of enjoyed being a nobody. But after another 40 years, God came to him, appeared to him in that very wilderness, and he had a work for him to do. God put his glory in a bush, you remember, that would not be consumed. And from it, Yahweh said, Moses, I want you to go to Egypt and set my people free. What happens next is, well, it is a lesson in how to make excuses, or maybe how not to make excuses. Moses immediately starts to suggest there's all kinds of reasons why he can't do it. First of all, he said, who am I to go to Pharaoh? I am a nobody. That's what I'm good at. It's very easy to use humility or supposed low self-esteem as an excuse not to serve God. Well, God continues to press him. He throws out a second excuse in verse 13. He says, I really don't know enough. I don't have enough religious experience. I don't know enough about you, God, and so I can't do this job. That's another excuse. By the way, it's a terrible excuse that for some people is going to keep them from ever knowing eternal life. It's going to condemn them to eternal hell, because every time they have an opportunity to begin to know and follow God, they always say, it's the same thing, I don't know enough. If I knew more about the Bible, if I understood this better, and it all stops right there. Well, God answered Moses and said, Moses, I'll tell you all you need to know about me. In fact, I'm going to tell you my name, which in itself is a really good place to start. He told him his name, Yahweh. That name that's built on a double verb. It means I shall continually be that which I have always been. Moses' next excuse can be found in Exodus chapter 4, verse 1. God, they'll never believe me. They won't believe me. And that's when the Lord said to him, Moses, what is that in your hand? He said, it's a stick, a little rod, a staff. I use it to tend the animals. God says, Moses, throw that stick down. He throws it down, and you remember amazingly that stick turns into a hissing, poisonous, dangerous, threatening serpent. God says, Moses, pick up that serpent by the tail. Now, I don't know a lot about snakes, but I know you don't pick up a snake by the tail. It's a sure way to be bit. But by faith, Moses obeys the word of the Lord. And yet, it's still not enough for him. He still resists God's call. He says, Lord, I'd love to serve you. I'd love to be a part of this, but I just don't have what it takes to get the task done. Moses was still having to learn that it wasn't his ability God was looking for. It was obedience that God was looking for. Do you have some of Moses in you? I think we've all experienced some of this, and we miss so much. When he calls us to serve him, we need to stop making excuses. And they sure do come easy, don't they? It's never the right time, or I don't have enough time, or I'm just not equipped enough, or people won't understand, or people won't be impressed with a guy like me. I'm just not the guy for it. When the Lord is calling you, and he's calling me to serve him, there's only one right answer, and that's to say yes. And you know what? I suspect today, God's calling us to serve him in some ways. What is our response going to be? Will we serve him? Will we trust him? Will we say yes to his call? Let me read from this wonderful passage, give more of the details of Exodus chapter 4. But he said, Moses is speaking, this is Exodus 4:13, but he said, Oh my Lord, please send someone else. Then the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses, and he said, Is there not Aaron, your brother, the Levite? I know that he can speak well. Behold, he's coming out to meet you, and when he sees you, he'll be glad in his heart. You shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth, and I will be with your mouth and with his mouth, and you will teach you, and will teach both of you what to do. He shall speak for you to the people, and he shall be your mouth, and you shall be as God to him. And take in your hand his staff, with which you shall do all the signs. Then Moses and Aaron went and gathered together all the elders of the people of Israel. Aaron spoke all the words that the Lord had spoken to Moses and did the signs in the sight of the people. And the people believed. And when they heard that the Lord had visited the people of Israel and that he had seen their affliction, they bowed their heads and worshipped.